How can virtually anyone sell high-ticket products or services, meaning anything above $3,000 up front, without ever jumping on a single sales call? This is a question I first asked myself about 2 years ago, and my whole company, my whole business, my portfolio companies and my clients' companies haven't been the same ever since. This principle goes back to a question that, in my opinion, every single entrepreneur out there who's trying to make a lot of money and do very well with their online business should ask themselves. And that question is, if someone had to buy my product or service, which is again anywhere above $3,000 up front, by the click of a button on a website, what would I do? You do everything that's included in the answer to that question, plus a strong sales call. And that is how you get extremely high conversions and run a business that is actually enjoyable to run in and of itself. Now, all of this goes back to first principles thinking. Human beings buy from people that they trust. And the beautiful thing in this day and age, the thing that gives you all of this scalability and this leverage, is that you can literally create a one-to-many system that engineers trust with the specific buyer type you want to have for completely free. If you build and structure your organic social media channels, meaning Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and anything this ties into, in a way where it not only attracts the specific ideal clients you're trying to work with, but the moment they look at your profile, they immediately assume that you're good at what you do and the solution you provide, which can solve one of their biggest pain points, is actually valid. You don't need to have sales calls anymore. All you need is a brand that is engineered in the strongest way possible and a setting team that's on top of their game. You have those two things, and you will never, ever, ever, ever struggle to convert people anymore. I want to dive into the actual intricacies of what makes this system work. Because although I can sit here and say, hey, just build a brand and people are going to buy without ever jumping on a sales call with you, that's easier said than done. And I'm aware of that. There are 3 levels that I want you to understand when we're talking about this that tie into how you can actually get someone to buy without a sales call. And these 3 levels are the where, the what, and the how. These 3 principles, when engineered correctly, will make you be able to scale past $60,000 a month in profit without you ever jumping on a single sales call. Before we jump into what these principles are and stand for though, we have to understand what types of content assets are actually converting. When you're first starting out, there are 3 key content assets that you need to have in place for you to be able to attract the traffic you want, convert them predictably without ever speaking to them, and actually make money from it. The first one is a master VSL. Now, the master VSL is a very, 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 very important part of all of the content assets that you're gonna have in the whole library that you're gonna be building over time. And that is for the simple reason that this VSL is where all of the conversion happens. The second type of content asset you need is going to be funnel breakdowns. Especially as you're starting out in the early stages, you need to have a specific way of breaking down other people's funnels and doing what's called authority hijacking. That way you can give yourself and your mechanism and what you're talking about proof, even though you have no case studies yet. And the third type of content asset that you need to implement for you to be able to do this is going to be in-person sit-downs. This is where you sit down with some of your ideal clients in person and break down exactly what strategy they need to leverage for them to be able to get to where they want to be. Hence, you're breaking down your unique mechanism to them in person, and you just capture all of that live on camera. Now, we talked about the where, the what, and the how. The how ties into how you're actually talking. This is one of the simplest things to say, but one of the hardest things to do. These 3 metrics are the only drivers of confidence and trust that a buyer has in your specific solution. The how ties into your tonality, your cadence, and your volume. how fast you talk, how loud you talk, and how you use your tonality when you're speaking. All of these things have a massive influence on how receptive the person you're speaking to actually is to what you're talking about. Understood. So the how matters a lot because depending on how you speak, people are either gonna take what you say as gospel, or they're just simply not going to believe you. And so having confidence in what you're talking about is one of the most important skill sets you need to master if you want to do anything within business. The reason for that is really simple. In most instances, when you're speaking about a certain vision you have and a goal and a target that you see the company hitting in the future, in most instances, you've never done it before. And so you need to be able to be extremely confident and convicted in yourself, and then take that confidence and conviction and put it into whatever you're trying to make people truly believe in. That was the how. Now, when we're diving into the where as well as the what, the most important thing I want you to understand there is that the what matters more than anything else. The what ties into what topic you are actually talking about and how you're breaking it down. And now, I know that this is a very simple thing to say and a very general thing to say, so I want to break this down in detail so you actually understand what I mean by this. You need to do research on your market and speak to your ideal clients every single day. And if you don't do that every single day consistently, you're going to have a really hard time doing well with anything you're doing because you simply don't have a what to talk about. You do not understand your ideal client, the main problem they have, and the solutions that they seek enough to the point where you can actually describe their specific situation, their pains, their dreams and desires in their language so that they actually listen to you. And so in most instances, your content assets are just going to fail from the get-go because the thing you're talking about has been regurgitated thousands and thousands and thousands of times. That is the what, okay? So you need to have an interesting topic to talk about that provides something that I like to call aha moments. And I'm going to break down to you right now how aha moments actually work. If we look at literally anybody doing marketing or sales, they always focus on strategic aha moments. What aha moments stand for is the moments where a true belief shift takes place. Most people believe that the way to provide value is just to give and provide information. But the reality of it is very, very different to that. Because when you're able to actually shift someone's behavior, right? So we have behavior changes. When someone actually changes their behavior, that is when true value is being provided. But the problem is, behavior changes don't happen when you provide information. Information is everywhere. Everybody has access to the same information. It's not a hard asset to get access to. But what is really hard to do is to get people to change their behavior to doing the things that are actually conducive to them seeing the results they want to see in life. And so if we want to see behavior changes, we need to understand where those behavior changes actually come from. And where they come from is very simple. Behavior changes come from belief shifts. People always ask themselves, who am I? Well, who you are is you, and your identity are literally just the sum of all of the beliefs that you have accumulated throughout your entire life. Your identity directly influences your actions. And the reason it does is because you have a certain belief and a certain way you see things about literally every single thing in your life. Whether you think this color is red or blue, that's a belief. And so what we need to understand is our beliefs influence our thoughts influence our actual decision-making, our decision-making influences the actions that we're taking. And so if we want to change the action someone is taking, we need to change the belief, the underlying belief that this falls under. How can we actually change someone's belief? The way we change someone's belief is by intentionally creating aha moments in that person's mind. Now, how can we create those aha moments in our marketing and our sales process? Again, you need to understand your ideal client extremely well to the point where you understand them better than they even understand themselves. And when you do so, you're gonna know what topics trigger those clients to do certain actions and take action on what you're actually talking about. And so the second part of all of this dives into the what. what are you actually talking about? What topics do you go over? And do they or do they not actually intentionally create these aha moments? Because if they do so, then they are engineered the right way, because they predictably shift people's beliefs, which leads to a behavior change, and a behavior change is what true value is. And so if you can provide true value, people are going to see you as an authority at what you're doing. They're going to see you as a credible source of valuable information, and they're going to buy your product because they trust you. And providing value through aha moments is the only way to get someone to do what you want them to do. So you need belief shifts, and belief shifts are triggered by aha moments. Usually the way you shift those beliefs is through smart storytelling, but that's a topic for another day. So again, we spoke about the first two parts. The how, right? How do you talk? What's your tonality like? How fast do you speak? How loud do you speak? Do you vary it every 3 seconds depending on what you're trying to emphasize on? If you're doing that already, that's amazing. What do you actually talk about? Do you talk about topics that are regurgitated, that you've heard 1,000 times before and that every single other person in your marketplace has expressed before? Or do you have a topic that everybody in your marketplace talked about 1,000 times before and they always had similar perspectives, and all of a sudden you come in and you give a completely new and novel perspective? This is what shifts the actual belief. This is the aha moment. How do you tell these perspectives? You tell these perspectives through stories. So again, I know that this is going very deep into human psychology and how people tick, but this is what you need to understand to be able to have profitable marketing and sales sequences. And so it is extremely important. Again, there's always topics in your industry that are being discussed by a lot of people. Those topics usually have a couple of different viewpoints, but they're usually pretty similar. If you can come into the industry and based on data and facts and logic, show people a completely different new perspective, the one that you gathered for yourself, right? Because you have to learn how to think for yourself. If you are able to show people a completely new perspective on the same topic and you make people understand this perspective through telling a story, you're going to shift their belief. That belief shift is going to shift their thought process. Their thought process is going to dictate their actions, so they change their actual behavior. And when the behavior is being changed, they see you as a credible source of information about XYZ topic, which is how you're able to have them be bought into who you are, the value you have to provide, and that is why people buy your product. Very important, extremely valuable. You get the point. So that was the how and that was the what. Now we have to talk about the last part, and the last part is, to be honest with you, the most straightforward part of all of this. The last part is literally just where. What I mean by that, and this is the simplest point of all of them, you cannot film a video that you send to potential clients, that you use to convert them, or maybe even post on YouTube to bring in more traffic. You cannot have a video being taken with your bed in your background. It makes zero sense. The way you show yourself online creates a certain perception amongst the audience that you have. And so based on this perception, people are going to interact with you. If based on your profiles, based on the videos people have seen, based on maybe blog posts, articles about you, based on how your setting team interacts with those people, based on how you behave on the sales call, if based on all of these things, they assume that you must be charging a very high price point, guess what? You're going to be able to convert them pretty easily. But if everything you send to them is pretty fucking shit, guess what? No one's gonna buy your stuff. And the reason for it is really simple. Even if your product is immensely valuable, the way people perceive you and your company and your product and the value that you have to provide, the way people perceive that is directly correlated to your show rates and your close rates. It really doesn't matter what price point you charge, and it also doesn't matter what the value is that you actually have to provide. If you're shit at creating and curating and keeping a certain perception, which is the most important part, within your audience's mind, you're not going to be able to get them to buy. So again, everything you're doing, from your organic profiles to the actual content assets you're putting out, to the email marketing, to your sales team, to everything you're doing on the closing calls, to everything you're doing to, get referrals and strategic partnerships. Everything you're doing is a message to the market. And these messages create a perception, a view that people have on you. And if this view is damn, Elias is really good at what he's doing. He's a credible source in XYZ, and I assume he charges 20 grand. And once they jump on the call and I tell them it's 10 grand, they're like, oh my God, that's cheaper than I thought. Obviously, it's an easy close. These things are easier said than done. And this ties into a ton of nuance. I could literally talk about these topics for hours and hours and hours and hours. But I want to keep this video simple and straightforward. And the way I want to keep this video simple is by just making you guys understand you need to have credibility. No one's gonna buy your stuff unless you have credibility. But credibility is not a fact. Credibility is a perception someone has on you. And that perception you can intentionally control. And so why not do that? Okay? At the end of the day, if you're selling a good service, a good product, if you provide a lot of value, then you should do your very best to sign people on because it's in their best interest to work with you. If they don't work with you, they're gonna give their money to someone else, and that other person is very likely gonna make their life worse, especially in comparison to your service. It is your moral obligation to take people's money. And that might sound funny, but that's what it is. So this is everything you need to know about the what, so the topic, the how, so how you express that topic, and the where, so the location that you actually show up in. There is a reason I'm sitting in an office space and not filming in my bedroom. The only places that I ever filmed videos in, whether that was for paid ads, organic content on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever that may be, every single time I film something, I film it in a location that aligns with how I want people to see me. That could be an office space, that could be an expensive hotel, that could be an Airbnb that I'm staying in, that could be a city just walking around. That can be different things. It can be in a cafe. You just gotta understand what effect what you're showing has on people, and this effect is way bigger than you think. Again, background, what you show, what you talk about. Do you provide aha moments or not? And how you talk. Do you actually talk confidently? Do you vary tonality, cadence, and volume in a way where you not only keep people's attention, but you make them understand what you're talking about is actually the objective reality of things? If you can pull these three off, have a couple of intentional content assets, as I spoke about, like the actual VSL, like the actual funnel breakdowns, like the actual in-person breakdowns. If you can leverage this in all three of those, and again, there's different structures for all three of these, right? Like that ties into a completely different topic on like how to engineer those. But high level, if you can do this with all of these video assets that I spoke about, you're gonna be able to do extremely well with it. And that is how you can sell anything without sales calls. Perception-based marketing. If you have any questions, reach out on IG. If you found value in this video, leave a like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.